Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Mary Cole, and this is the Thriving Writers podcast for writers poised to achieve their next big breakthrough. Please enjoy this episode and consider joining us over at the Thriving Writers community at thrivingwriters.com. Welcome, everybody. This is Mary Cole, and with me today, I have illustrator extraordinaire Niña Mata. Welcome. If you could please do us the pleasure of introducing yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Mary. And thank you for having me here. I am very, very honored to be here. My name is Niña Mata, and I am an author illustrator. I started off as an illustrator, but now I am in my author era.
That's
I,
amazing. I am so sorry to mislabel you because, yes, you are now ascending into the ranks of author illustrator.
yes, very excited. This is a milestone moment for me. But yes, I have been an illustrator for, I think I'm celebrating my 15th year. No, yep, 15th year doing this. And since then, I think my author illustrated book is going to be my 30th published book to date. Yeah. Pretty exciting. Yeah. Um and yeah, just I've always loved drawing, and this has always been a path that I was kind of building towards ever since I was a kid. And when you see, like, when you pull back and you're like, "Oh, this was always it. This was it." Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you start drawing?
Oh gosh. I don't remember a time where I didn't have a a pencil, a chalk, or crayon in my hand. Me and my cousin were only like a year apart. She's older than me, and we would always grandma would always babysit us,
Yeah.
and she gave us this chalkboard to share, like this drawing thing, like, and she's like, go to town, and she'd always like cut the chalk, like the drawing board in half, and always her space was much bigger than mine, and we
Rude.
would
Grandma.
no, my cousin.
Oh,
Yeah.
cousin.
Yeah. So, it started off there because she was really good at drawing. I think my whole family's pretty good at art, and it started off competing with her and wanting to get better than her.
Spite is a very powerful motivator. am maybe not a good person to say that, but anything that gets fuel in that engine is fine by me.
Oh, yeah, yeah, so it started from there, and then it became like, I'm an only child, so it became a safe haven for me when I came here from the Philippines, and I didn't know what it meant to be an only child because 'cause I'm surrounded by family in the Philippines, but when we moved here, we didn't know anybody, and we lived in this basement, and my parents went to work, so I had to stay home and do nothing, and drawing became that space for me to just, like, be somewhere else.
So when did you start thinking this could be something that I do like professionally? When was that pivot?
I think junior high when, I realized, like in junior high, you're supposed to pick a high school if you're not automatically put in your zone school. And I had options. I had, the FAME school because I grew up in New York. I had the FAME school where I could, pursue performing arts, or the High School of Art and Design where I could pursue, visual arts. And I realized I have stage fright, like no other. Um, so I was like, "Okay, we're not doing the fame school. Let's go let's go to the art school." And I auditioned. I mean, they had a test for it and to see if I could actually draw, and I could. And then I got in, and it's been yeah, that's where it started.
That's
And
such a special well, one of the many, many special things about New York is that you can have kids slot into these magnet schools or whatever we would call them
yeah,
elsewhere.
yeah, exactly. I was very fortunate have grown up here, and there's so many museums. My, like, one of the things that I really admire about my parents is that on the weekends it was because they worked so much.
Mhm.
They were in survival mode when we came here, and they would do night school and then also work in the morning and then do night school. And but the weekends were strictly for family time. And
Amazing.
yeah, and a lot of those times we went to the cloisters, we did all the museums. Um and I think my and all the libraries too. And
Yeah.
I think my love for both art and books kind of,
Started to weave together there.
yeah, from there. Yeah.
That's so wonderful. I mean, you were saying your whole family is artistically inclined and that they fostered that because that's not the story for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I don't think they meant to foster it. It's just that it's like, like sometimes they're just like, "Oh yeah, you should do you're very good at art. You should keep drawing." But then when it came to like towards when you get older, I don't know why, but they try to convince you to pursue something else because it's
Yeah.
the arts is a very scary career to try and get into. And that always confused me because once I finished high school, my parents were like, "Okay, now you did this art thing. Why don't you do computer graphics?" And I was like, "That has nothing to do with
Yeah.
art." They're
What a
like,
mixed
"Yeah.
message. Yes, go to this specialized school. Okay, now that's over and we're becoming accountants.
Yes, now that you got that out of your system, why don't you do this?" And that always confuses me.
Spoiler alert, you did not get it out of your system.
No, I did not.
So, we were chatting a little bit before. You told me about some of your early journey, and it sounds like you started with educational materials, maybe institutional publishing a little bit. Tell me how that got started.
So we started in well, first of all, I was a graphic designer for like a small printing company, like a local, like it was like the We Buy Gold flyers and clubbing flyers. And I did that for like 2 years, thinking that that was going to be it. I was just going to be a graphic designer, but
So, you did go to computers. Haha.
I did. I was scared too. It is very scary. So I did try to do the safe route, and it was painful. It was painful to get up every morning to a job that never gave me anything. Like it never fulfilled me, and it was just very frustrating. Um and so in 2010, I think I had like $300 in my bank account. I was like, "Okay, that's it. We're just gonna quit from here. We're not gonna try to save money and then get stuck another year because you're never gonna save money. You're just gonna do it."
Not in New York, especially.
No, exactly. So I told myself I would give myself 3 to 5 years um, to try and do this, like really do it. And so my first step was to get an agent, and that took like a whole year of just cold emailing people, um, and hoping that somebody would reply. And and this is like, pre-social media where you could reach out to like illustrators. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know how to start. I didn't know what to send out there. And so luckily I did get the attention of my current agent right now. Um, and she kind of took me under her wing, and that started the ball rolling. And in after a year or two of since I quit the graphic design job, I got my first book offer for an educational company.
Yeah.
And um but at the same time I was also getting married. So I had to do like a side job. I was a receptionist for an ad agency, and that killed me cuz I didn't know how grueling it was to do a picture, like not a picture book, but like an educational book, because the
Mhm.
time limit, I don't know if a lot of people know that when you do educational books, they give you half the time that you really need. Like for I think it was a 32-page, um, children's book, like an early reader. They gave me, like, 2 months or 3 months.
Oof.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of time. That's including sketches and coloring altogether. Like, it was really a time crunch, and I said I could do it because I had to.
Yeah.
Had to prove myself, and so there were a lot of and then in the morning, I would go to work, like a 9 to 5, so there would be a lot of, late nights, and I didn't really put in my 100% because I couldn't, because I was exhausted, and that's how it started off. It was kinda rocky, and I really wasn't sure if I was cut out for it. But then I did get other educational jobs, some
Let me ask
editorial.
you at this very early juncture, you say you didn't know any illustrators, you didn't really know what you were doing. How did you start to learn, I guess, the conventions of picture book illustration versus like editorial illustration, right? There are these kind of insider rules that nobody lists out anywhere, but how did you tip in that direction and figure out composition and what was required of you?
Oh, good question. I think I just faked it till I made it. I really
Perfect.
did. I probably did a lot of Googling. It was it was that time where I felt like people were giving me the like an editorial work with all these jargons and I'm supposed to understand it. And I didn't want to look like um someone who is so inexperienced that I have to ask about sizing and all this stuff. So I kind of just Googled it and just kind of hoped for the best. And if they had to correct me, then they corrected me and I learned that way. I learned through trial and error basically. A lot of times, really a lot of times.
And then you sort of reached a natural limit in the education book market.
I did. It was the around 2016 and um I wasn't getting any jobs. And the jobs that I was getting, they were the same work that I've been doing for the 7 years, and there was no growth. I wasn't allowed to the work that I was getting wasn't giving me a challenge anymore. I actually fell asleep a couple of times trying to finish projects, and I that's when I knew. I was like, "Okay, this is not getting me anywhere. And if this is all there is, then I think I need to stop here, because
Mhm.
I need to help my family, and this isn't paying the bills at all."
But you took a pivot and started evolving your style. So tell me how you came up with your style in the first place and what got into you to change it.
First of all, I said no. I said no to the jobs that were coming in, the potentials, and I took that risk, even though, um, I think I said no to maybe 6 or 7 jobs, knowing it's the same exact, um, book that I was gonna do all the time, and so I said no, and I was hoping that my agent would trust me and not, like, let me go, because who says no to jobs? And, I told her, "Let me give me a minute, and I kinda wanna just refocus on what makes me happy, and what brings joy to my life, and what kind of art makes me not want to sleep." Um, and also a big thing, I I was taking care of a toddler, so time management had to all fit into that. So I had to create art that worked with my schedule. I can make art that's absolutely beautiful, but it's gonna take me 3 days. It's not helpful, and it's not gonna get me anywhere. So I needed to find that balance of making art that makes me happy, and also I I'm efficient. And by by playing around and giving myself the space to just breathe and just kind of sit down and start over again from scratch. Like, okay, not really from scratch. From where I am, and reevaluate what makes me happy and what fulfills me. That really, really helped my pivot in a big way.
And was this so you're obviously listening to yourself, and I think one of the adjectives I would offhandedly ascribe to your work is joyful. There is such movement and such expressiveness to the faces, and it's a very positive style. Not Pollyanna, not sugar coated or anything, but just genuinely positive, which I feel like makes a lot of sense once you step into your purpose and what feeds you and fulfills you on a personal level. By this point, though, were you also more in conversation with the picture book landscape out in publishing, other artists? Did you draw from that when you reinvented?
Um, no, not really. I mean, in term are you talking about in terms of community? Did I have like an artist
Yeah,
community?
like did you start paying more attention to picture books, specifically early readers, other illustrators? Maybe you started spreading your tentacles a little bit more?
Yes, yes, yes. I think it helped that I did have my daughter was at that age where we
Mm.
were surrounded by children's books. Whether I liked it or not, I had to look and read all kinds of children's books, from board books to, puzzles and a whole bunch of picture books. And I it's funny because it never really dawned on me that if I want to do a picture book, maybe I should look at a picture book.
Did you hear that, writers? I get a lot of manuscripts where I'm like, "You should stop what you're doing," and this is not to disparage any one writer or anything like that. You should stop what you're doing, though, seriously, and read 100 picture books, and I think we would be having a very different conversation because it is something you internalize after a while.
Yes, yes. Yeah, just getting to know the cadence of how these books work and everything. It just I didn't realize that I hadn't really looked at a picture book until I was reading it to my daughter. And that's when I think it all started working out. The pivot, just it happened in that magical moment of just everything just sinking together.
And then you offered your sort of new style sheet or little portfolio sketches, whatever, to your agent. And your agent was like, "Oh, we can run with this."
Mhm. Yes. I was actually scared because um I actually I also wanted to add that when I was looking at picture books, I noticed at that time that there weren't a lot of kids that looked like my daughter or my friends. And I wondered why. And I had seen a Norman Rockwell painting of the kids running through like the that green grassland, and I was wondering like, okay, this is probably um a nostalgic feeling for him of what America looks like. That I think that's what it was, right? I was like, okay, then what's my nostalgic feeling of what my America looks like? And it was me, in Queens. Like I grew up going in and out of bodegas, buying candy and buying sodas and, after school eating snacks. And that's what I drew. I drew something that was personal to me and hopefully relatable. And I sent it to my agent, and it just it just took my career to another level. Yeah, being honest with myself, basically.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of tie it together in terms of like checking in with yourself, realizing where you had hit walls or were no longer engaged, plugging into the external and just dreaming up. On the novel side, you often hear people say, write the book you want to read, right? And here it's draw the world you want to see.
It sounds very obvious when you pan back and you look back at life, but those little moments were just aha moments for me. I was just like, "Oh, I should be drawing about what I know. Why not? Why am I drawing kids with red hair when I myself don't have red hair?"
Hey, I have 2 redheaded boys, my friend.
Right. No, but then you would draw it. And and I always was fascinated with red hair. So all my characters before this change had red hair.
That's so funny.
It's so funny. Yeah.
Well, clearly, I'm a natural blonde, so I don't know where it came from. No, I'm just so you got a response. You
Mhm.
kind of stepped into your intentionality, you stepped into your purpose, and the world was like, "Hey, where have you been?"
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's exactly what happened. 2 months or 3 months after sending out that postcard, I sent it out myself and then my agent sent it out to publishers. 2 months later, I get an email saying from Harper saying that um an Olympian wants you, only you, to illustrate her book because of that postcard. She saw herself in that postcard. She saw her brothers and her sister in that postcard. It tugged on her heartstrings, and that's exactly what I wanted that to happen. I wanted it to happen that way. And that first picture book, She's Got This by Lori Hernandez, that was it. That was my first picture book officially, and it hit the New York Times bestseller the next year. It just boom.
Well, I mean, years and years and years of work and passion went into that boom, but and then it was off to the races with picture books, but you also do early readers.
Yes, I think a year after doing that book with Lori, Kelly Starling Lyons had an idea of doing an early reader with Ty. And again, it feels all kismet because my daughter was in that imaginative stage. And a lot of people don't know I had to test for this. So there were a couple of people in line to be the artist for Ty. And they all wanted to see what our version of imagination looks like because Ty lives in a very imaginative world. And that was our that was our test. Like how does Ty's world look to you? And again, I looked at my daughter and I would watch her draw and she would put herself in this life on paper using crayons. And that was it. It was very simple. It's like that's what kids do. You just draw with crayon and you live there. and and it worked. That's exactly what they wanted to see, and I think we are 8 books in now of Ty's travels. Yeah.
It's so funny because I think, there is such a challenge to and I'm coming from kind of the writing perspective, the manuscript perspective, right? There's such a challenge to how you render these imagined scenes or like a flashback scene because a lot of people have this idea in their heads that it's just thought bubbles and then you draw whatever they're thinking about in the thought bubble. But you have to find a way to make that come alive a little bit more for the current market.
Yeah, I think with illustrators, I mean, that's our job, the visual narrative of it. I hope that people when people look at my work that I'm adding to the story rather than just drawing what is being written. And that to me is what makes a standout illustrator is that you're adding to the story versus just, you know, putting putting pictures to whatever is
Replicating the
happening in the yeah,
story.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is such a key takeaway for a lot of aspiring writers, which is you are in a collaboration, you're in a partnership. The illustrator is bringing, even though a writer usually originates the story, the character, the plot, whatever, the illustrator's contribution has the power to elevate that story into something else, like a beautiful alchemy, a combination of talents. When you're evaluating a manuscript and your agent says, "Oh, I have this, that potential project for you," what does a writer do well where you can really sense yourself slipping into it and you have, your imagination starts firing, you have room to play? What do those writers do that some other writers might not?
Oh, I love that question. I guess I don't know. Authors, you guys have such a magical way of putting words together that that's what sticks out to me. Your play on words, the way you collage these words that like separately they don't mean anything, but then together that the way you create it is so artistic and so creative. When words jump out of pages to me, that's when I know that this is a yes, that this is a yes for a manuscript. I think it's better if I answer what doesn't work for me
Yeah, perfect.
is the art notes, honestly. Um,
This is a very controversial topic. Please, please go off on this.
it's the art notes. I feel like the more I see, if I see a manuscript with a lot of art notes, it's already giving me that you don't trust the illustrator to create vibes. And it's scary to say yes because you can tell that that's their baby and they want full control of what happens to the book from finish to end, and it's no longer a collaborative. Those are the things that kind of make me pull away from manuscripts.
Yeah, writers don't like to hear that, but um, picture books are inherently collaborative, right?
Yeah.
If you want full control, you self-publish, you hire an illustrator, it's a work for hire. You can tell them what to do until you're blue in the face or they quit because you're micromanaging them. I
Yes.
mean, that's the only route to total control in the picture book world.
Yes.
And but I do think that illustration notes have a degree of egregiosity, if you will,
Ooh,
for ooh.
lovely word.
Thank you. Um, so for example, if it's like, Scarlett has a shoulder length bob, brown hair, a blue bow in her hair, right? It's obviously your child or grandchild that you're describing there. And, that is just, I would say that kind of stuff is the most egregious. However, I do often counsel writers that illustration notes have a place only if there's something going on intended story-wise that's necessary for the visuals to convey, which is not clear from the text itself.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think some art notes are helpful, but the ones that you said, the ones that describe somebody to the T and just like,
Yeah, or it's like the dialogue is, "Let's go play hockey." Illo note, they run to the ice rink. It's like, we can string A and B together.
exactly. Yeah, and it's very hindering. Like it almost makes me feel stuck on the suggestion because I'm honestly a people pleaser and it's a bad habit of mine. So the minute I read something that's suggestive or that the illustrator has, I mean, the author has suggested, that's it. I can't move away from that. Like I need the space to think, and I can't see art notes. And then a lot of times the publishers are kind enough to remove them if they don't think it's necessary. Yeah. A little note there, a little secret.
That's a really, really valuable insight, though. So, to make a parallel to editorial feedback, when I give notes, I say, I avoid being extremely prescriptive because the problem or the issue, the opportunity for growth, whatever is for the author to solve, right? And so I think bad notes are do this. And it's interesting to me that there's a parallel to a bad illustration note just kind of sticks that idea in your head. It might not be the best idea because they're not an illustrator, but you have trouble moving on and feeling free to be yourself and bring yourself to the project, but that's what you're there for.
Right. Yeah, and the more usually when that happens, I feel like it doesn't elevate the work anymore. It's literally just doing what I'm told. And that those are the jobs I that I stayed away from. Those are the jobs I said no to a lot
Yeah.
of times. Mhm.
Well, it almost is reminiscent of your early work with the educational market where it's probably like kids with test tubes, kids playing
Yes.
sports, you know?
It was literally like that, and I think it still is. I don't know why. Um, I have a lot of colleagues that are are still in the educational game, and they're like, "I don't understand why they want this specific person to have blonde curly hair. Like, what is the rationality? Why can't it just be whatever I draw?" And it's still happening. Yeah, I'm very curious as to why. Like, no one ever answered. No one ever gave me that answer.
They probably have a list somewhere. They're just, it's like the punch list of graphics that they need. So you are pivoting again to the author illustrator title, right? You're now a hyphenate. How did that come around?
Ah, I think it was inevitable that it was always gonna evolve to eventually me telling the story. Um, I've been blessed to read and have collaborated with so many talented authors that it was just inevitable that I would just end up getting hit by the author bug. And we are all, inherently just storytellers in general, right?
Yeah.
Every one of us has a story. And that's what we do. In any field, actually. You're a scientist, you're telling a story in science. You're a mathematician, you tell that story with math. And that's that's just how humans are. We're just natural storytellers. And this was a long time coming. It actually started with a this particular book that's coming out this month. Girls to the Front, my anthology, my middle grade anthology. Started off as an Instagram post, and it was a 30-day challenge on highlighting 30 Asian American women. And it was a challenge because I honestly didn't know if I could name 30 Asian American women who
Mhm.
are doing things out there. And because no one ever really sheds light on that. And I was wrong. There are a lot of women out there. And my one of my good friends, slash editor was like, "Hey, let's turn this into a this is something. Let's turn this into a book." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And that was it.
So I would say a lot of your catalog, if you will, has I said earlier, this joyful vibe to it, but also a connecting thread, and correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of showcasing all kinds of kids doing all sorts of things, empowering kids' individuality, all of these like very positive, uplifting projects that you've taken on. How did you choose middle grade, which you haven't had as much experience in, for the vehicle for this? Because, the 40, it's 30 or 40. The book is 40. So that would have been a long picture book, but could have been nested as a picture book. It would have accommodated that. Why did you go older?
I think it's because there are some of the topics are a little bit older as well, like the Chinese Exclusion Act. That is something that I think middle graders would be more inclined to learn about. Um, and a lot of them are, yeah, a lot of the women are more their stories are more of something that a middle grade would probably read versus um kids who, I mean, I'm sure they would understand it too, but um some of them are very heavy. A lot of yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely thinking of like Love in the Library by Maggie Tokuda Hall, which tackles the heavy topic of the Japanese internment camps. But to your point, yeah, if everybody has adversity that they've overcome, or people have different events in their life story that maybe were the crucible that shaped who they became in the world, hitting a 6-year-old with 40 of those is probably a tall order.
Yes, exactly.
So, was writing a challenge, or do you feel like you've absorbed enough via osmosis to be able to do it?
I think the fact that it was nonfiction was helpful, like, because I am just starting out as an author, but I love research. I have always loved a good research. I love deep diving into people's personal, I mean, like, their lives and learning more about these women, and and the f and yeah, that made it a lot easier, and the internet made it a lot easier.
But you're a library lover. You've paid your dues there.
Yes, no, yes. I lived in libraries. I still do. I still live in libraries, yeah.
Just completely random thought popped into my head, and I think that the concepting of this project is so brilliant. Did you approach any of your subjects for blurbs? I mean, is did you interface with any of these powerful women?
I did. I have, like, maybe, like, 2 or 3. Misu Okan, she is, the NASA engineer that created the head of the Perseverance that went to Mars.
Yeah.
Um, so she's in the book, and the first time we ever interacted, she said she was on Mars time, so she couldn't talk to me
That's
all that time.
amazing.
I was like, "What? Never met anyone on Mars time. That's amazing." And, so we actually talk, a fair amount. Yeah, yeah. Um, we built a little friendship after after this
Oh,
book,
that's really cool.
and I'm hoping to see her at the book launch, so fingers crossed.
That's really awesome. I mean, in publishing, everyone is about 2 years ahead, so it's probably 2028 on in publishing time,
Yeah, yeah.
but I have never heard of anyone on Mars time.
I know. It's amazing. Yeah.
Is this a challenge you would like to repeat? Is there other stuff that you maybe wanna do either in writing or for this kind of older audience?
I do. I am in the middle of writing or attempting to write a middle grade um fantasy book about Bakunawa, which is a mythical creature in Philippine folk tales. And yeah, it's a struggle just to find the time to sit down and really be disciplined and write. I think that's the hardest thing for me to do. It's just to sit and write and not edit myself. Constantly, I have to stop editing myself.
You got the bug bad. Going from
Mm,
nonfiction, kind of little article-based text to a middle grade fantasy novel.
yes, definitely help me.
So, to your point, you have spoken a lot during our time together about this balance, right? You were falling asleep on sketches after doing your 9 to 5. You had a young child. How do you juggle it? And is there maybe this disconnect between, oh, I could be doing my paid contracted work, or I could be over here with my little side project?
I think over the years I've gotten really good at knowing, of prioritizing basically. Um, so for example, I had a project that I'm doing right now that actually is paying me to work. So I got that done first. And I can gauge how much time I would need for it so that I can then look at my schedule and say, okay, well then I can fit in all my other pursuits in this chunk of time after I finish this. And I've been doing that successfully for the past, I'd like to say, 2 years. Before that, I couldn't juggle anything, and
Just hair on fire.
yeah, and it was just like I think it's just experience at this point. It's just trying, like, knowing how much work something is gonna be. Yeah.
And are you thinking you might illustrate? Are we going to have gorgeous interstitials between chapters?
I hope so. I want it to be exactly like a classic, like, middle grade fiction. Yeah.
So let's go back to this editing yourself. Take me through a writing session. Do you start where you left off? Do you read through what you wrote your last session and then hate yourself afterward and get stuck?
That is, yeah, spot on, spot on. I will just open my laptop to where I last left off, and I'm like, "Okay, well, none of this sends me anymore."
Or it sends you, but in a bad way.
Exactly. And then I have to start over. I think there was one point where I started chapter 1, like, for 3 months, and I'm like, "What am I doing? This is not getting me anywhere." And I really just had to look at the last sentence I wrote and just keep going. That's what I've been doing, but it's so cringy. I'm like, "Okay, but just keep going."
Yes, you have struck upon some essential wisdom the hard way, it sounds like. But chapter ones are so tough for
Oh, yeah.
everyone. You're going to go back and hammer on that thing so many more times.
Really? Wow. Well, I'm
Well, when
glad I'm
you
not
when you
done.
get to the end, you will have learned so much from telling yourself the story that chapter 1 will be, oh, you're like, "But wait a minute, I need to seed in, this character development or whatever,"
Yes.
and it almost doesn't matter, which is so funny to say to something that feels like it matters so
Mhm,
much.
mhm. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I have a feeling that's what's gonna happen 'cause, um, I'm so stuck on, like, how many words a middle grade is supposed to be, and I'm looking at how much I've written. I was like, "This is way more than," and I'm only in chapter 5. How's this gonna end? But then I tell myself, the more you write, the more you know about this world, and then you could just cut. It's easier to cut than it is to add on, right? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in fantasy, you are gonna decide or discover what the true kind of core of the world building is. And then, maybe you don't need this beautiful description that is cool, but maybe doesn't fit into something that happens later in the plot. I would almost always rather have somebody overwrite rather than underwrite, especially in fantasy where the word counts can be a little bit longer.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm starting to learn that that's how I should keep going. Yeah.
But I love that just read the last sentence, figure out where you're pointing your arrow, and then don't look back.
Yep, and I have, like, notes at the very top of each chapter just saying it all over again, just, like, what the goal is. Just get to that goal. And however you get to that goal, how many words, just get to that one goal and make it exciting. That's it.
Amazing. So you are cooking on the writing front. And in terms of illustration, are you established in sort of your visual style, your calling card? Do you feel another evolution on the horizon? Who are you as an artist at this point?
I think, yeah, I feel it. I've felt it for a while that my style is currently in the middle of shifting. I don't know where, I don't know how or when, but I feel it because I think you just know. There you just know. Every time I look at my art, I'm like, I think this can be pushed a little bit further. I just don't know when that inspiration is gonna strike, but it's bubbling for sure.
What to you is pushing it further? What does that mean?
The the level of joy that something gives me, can always be pushed a little further. And it's not for anybody else, it's just for myself. And just like, what is something that I can add here that I can look at this page and just go, "Good job."
I love that. I was expecting you to say like, "Well, I really wanna work on body language and, like, emotional expression."
There's nothing really particular, it's just scenes, like pulling out emotions from scenes, that's what I love doing, with people. So if I meet, a mom and their kid and they're like, "Oh, this spoke to me. I cried when I saw this." That's my job well done for myself. When I evoke emotions just with art, that's it.
Well, you were just saying about science and math, these are all mechanisms for making meaning, right?
Mhm.
And what is the deepest meaning for humans is the experience, the emotional life that we get to have. And you are transmitting that through illustrations and now words, but primarily so far illustrations.
Yes. I think that's my first language, honestly. The the world of art is my primary language. It's really hard for me to convey my messages with words. My vocabulary, my bank is not as deep and depth as I want it to be. And that's okay. Not everybody needs to carry all those words. For me, it's the art. It's and I know how to speak in that language very well, I think.
You're a beautiful genius.
Oh,
Thank you so much for coming on. Niña Mata is our guest today. Please check out Girls to the Front, the Author-Illustrator debut,
yay.
and check out any of her other 87,000 published works that are beautifying shelves all over the place.
Thank you for that.
Of course. You have been a delight, and I have loved I am not so my mother is actually a fine art painter. It should be baked into this cookie,
Oh,
maybe,
yeah,
but it is
yeah.
not. So
Same thing with
so
my daughter. My daughter is the same way.
she's
Yeah.
drawing. She's drawing in crayons. She's probably drawing better than I can.
Well, people put a lot of pressure on her because her mommy is an illustrator, and I often tell people, "Hey, stop that, because she is her own person. Let her do her own thing. She doesn't have to follow in anybody's footsteps." It's
I
a lot
would
of
tour
pressure.
with my mom at to various gallery shows and stuff, and the number one question far away, "Oh, are you an artist too?" And I
Mhm.
just no. No, ma'am, no, sir. Not for me, but I use words, and
Mhm.
you use pictures, and I think that's lovely that you, kind of nip it in the bud when somebody tries to come after your daughter and put pressure on her. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation. So insightful, such a point of view that I can inhabit that I almost never get to inhabit. And it's just so amazing to see how you see the world.
No, thank you so much. You've been such a pleasure, and I'm usually very nervous, but this was so lovely and just a very calming space to be in.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, everybody check out Niña Mata, and thank you for coming on. Thank you for listening out there. And here's to a good story. This has been Mary Cole and the Thriving Writers Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about our dynamic, supportive, and engaging Thriving Writers community, head on over to goodstorycompany.com. And if you want to work with me directly on your manuscript, I can be found at Mary Cole, and that's Cole with a K, .com. I hope to see you in the Thriving Writers community and hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the Thriving Writers Podcast. Here's to a good story.